Hello and welcome to episode 292 of the Paint All the Minis podcast, the show where you can listen to the widest range of guests that I can convince to chat to me about the tabletop gaming hobby. This week I talked to Rob from Fae Miniatures. Fae Miniatures is not only a YouTube channel but also a soon-to-be rule set and game. We talk about both the channel and the game during the show, along with the usual backstory and development of the hobby from Rob's perspective. Sometimes when I meet someone for a podcast, you just instantly know that they are going to be awesome, and Rob was one of those people. I feel I need to mention it here, but during the show and at the start of the show I call him Rawdogging Rob, and that is because we didn't do any form of pre-show chat. We just went straight in, and I just feel I need to clarify that. Rob doesn't in fact call himself Rawdogging Rob, not that I'm aware of anyway, and if you don't know what Rawdogging is, then don't worry, but I wouldn't start using it freely down the pub as I went into it without too much preparation. Substitute. Anyway, I think I've dug that hole enough. But anyway, he's not actually called Rawdogging Rob. And check out what Rawdogging means before you actually use it in conversation. But anyway, it was a great conversation. He's a great guy. Wish him all the very best in the future. And we hope that you enjoy the show. Don't forget that the fuel for the podcast is genuine interactions and relationships, not advertisements, revenue, or algorithms. So make sure that you swing by the Discord. There's a link to the Discord in the podcast description. We'd all genuinely love to hang out with you and see what you've been up to, not just painting and gaming, but anything else that you are into also. We are just coming to the end of our current monthly paint, where we have been painting some stuff. What have we been painting this month? Oh, like Pile of Shame. I think I mentioned it in the last show, Pile of Shame. So we've been delving into our Pile of Shame, picking out something that's been in there for ages, and then we have been painting that. And upcoming next month is Inner Child, channeling your inner child. So we try and keep the ideas for the monthly paint really broad. So channeling your inner child. You can use that however you see fit. And it doesn't need to be anything specific. Some people say that they like the paint activity because it helps them to do something that they haven't done before. Other people say that maybe don't like it because it stifles the flow of the usual paint thing. And I'm kind of one of those people usually. I've got like a set thing that I'm trying to paint. But you can interpret the monthly paint activity however you see fit. So swing by the Discord server and get involved, and if it's something that helps you and it's something you appreciate, then that is great. There's loads of other stuff that's hanging in the Discord server, but I'm not going through it now. I think that's enough of the pre-ramble. Let's go.
Paint all the minis. Paint all the minis that you can. And when you paint your minis, listen to that podcast with Dan Adams, that is.
Do you smell that? Do you smell that? Dull coat, son. Nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of dull coat in the morning. You know, one time we varnished a whole army for 12 hours. When it was all over, I walked up. We didn't find one of them. Not one stinking unpainted mini. The smell, you know, that varnish smell? The whole army smelled like victory.
So hey, I am here with Rawdogging It Rob. How's it going, Rob? You doing all right?
Yeah, good, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, let me just explain Rawdogging just then. We've not had a pre-show. Usually in episodes, we have like a 20-minute pre-show. And just amazingly, there's some building noise that's occurred right here. So we'll kind of keep going and see if that's interrupting. Is it interrupting you, the building noise, or is it all right?
No, it's all good.
Cool.
I'm usually on a boat with loads of noise from the canal, so I'm actually off the boat now, so hopefully I shouldn't be interrupted unless my dog wants to join the chat.
Right. Yes, so Rawdogging It, because we've not done a pre-show. So we're straight in, because I got a nice warm feeling with this conversation. So you've mentioned a few interesting things there, but before we talk about the interesting life stuff, just talk to us a little bit about yourself and why you've come onto the show, what you've come onto the show to talk to us about.
So I have been making a pretty unique miniatures game. I'm kind of in the final throes of it at the minute, trying to tie about a year and a half worth of work all together and making it pretty for a final release. But yeah, I've been making a game where you build your models out of natural materials, which I've posthumously dubbed nature bashing. The idea is it's all based around the Fae and Fae creatures and this connection to nature. And yeah, I've been making, it started off as just like a little kind of hobby project that kind of quickly ballooned into something a lot more unwieldy, but it's been going really well so far. And yeah, I think this is a good time to kind of like bring the wider community into it, because a lot of cool things are happening on my side with the development. I've brought a few people in to help me with the final steps, and yeah, I'm really excited to kind of show it to the wider community.
That's awesome, man. And there's so many interesting little questions that I've got in there, but I think all things come in due course. So we'll kind of get to know you for a little bit, if that's all right. And one of the first things that you mentioned is, and that I'm aware of from watching your YouTube channel, is that you live on a boat, a narrow boat. Is that right?
Yeah. So we got a boat a couple of years ago, me and my partner, and we've spent the last 2 years kind of taking it from an absolute wreck to a home. And during that process, I thought, why not add a load more complexity and try and start a YouTube channel and a miniatures game and create a tiny workshop in an engine room at the same time. So we get
a lot of American listeners who won't have the faintest idea what we mean when we say a narrow boat. So not just talk to us about the narrow boat, talk to us about what you live on, and why those waterways are very important for the UK historically, and then talk to us a little bit about what it's like living on a narrowboat.
Yeah, so it's quite a unique thing to England. There are a few kind of other canal systems around Europe, but I think we're really known for it. Yeah, during the Industrial Revolution, there was this like kind of small amount of time between steam and kind of like engines and stuff, where the most efficient way to get stuff from A to B around the UK was on narrowboats. So we built like a huge canal system connecting all of the major cities in the UK, and it was basically like very thin canals, and to allow these boats to be as efficient as possible, they made them very long and very thin, so you can just about squeeze two narrowboats past each other if they're going in the opposite way. But yeah, traditionally they were basically just our kind of manufacturing transportation hub in the UK. Since then, obviously, we've moved on to road transport and stuff. So we've got this like kind of historic waterway system that now has become kind of like this really like kind of beautiful area of land, and you get a lot of like retirees buying canal boats and living on them, but in recent years, with all of like the housing crisis and stuff, there's been a like influx of younger people joining the canal system. And yeah, you get a lot of very odd characters, but everyone is very, very nice and lovely, and there's a kind of real community aspect. I mean, we lived on a street opposite the canal for 2 years in our town, and we didn't know anyone. And then within 2 weeks of getting our canal boat, we started meeting and making friends with everyone in the same area. So it was a really great kind of transition for us. And yeah, I don't see us moving back to a house anytime soon.
What's one of the perks of living on a narrowboat as opposed to living in an actual fixed house, as in like fixed to the ground?
Well, the main thing is you can move about. We haven't moved for 2 years as we've been doing the boat up, but we're literally just about to head off at the end of the month, as my partner's got a job in the other side of the country. And rather than having to faff around getting a new housing situation, we can literally just uproot and move our house with us, which is very cool.
How does it work in terms of like... do you have to declare where you're going to be? Are you free to kind of float and go wherever you want? Do you have to like have a set pitch, or can you like see a space and be like, oh, I live here now?
there's kind of two kinds of narrowboaters. There's like permanent moorings where you can, what we've been doing for the last couple of months or a couple of years even, you pay for a specific mooring at a specific spot. Usually you have like electric hookup and kind of amenities. We didn't have any of that, so we've had to like kind of live off grid, which has been good practice, I guess. But then, yeah, the other type of boater is like a continuous cruiser, and you can basically stay at any spot on one side of the canal for up to 2 weeks in most places, and then you kind of have to move on from there. You only have to move like a mile or so down from where you were previously, but it's kind of nice because before this we lived in a camper van for a little while, and I've always been like a fan of little cozy spaces. I built myself like a little shed and loads of different things in the past. But yeah, the problem with, especially in the UK, kind of van life, it's very like a grey area where you can and can't park, and you're constantly stressing about being moved on. But at least with the narrowboat, you're able to have a little bit of peace of mind where you're moored up.
Hey, Rob, can you still hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry, lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I just accidentally podged mute on my microphone. Sorry. It's definitely staying in the edit. That was amazing professionalism there. Just push the mute button and then ask a question. So yeah, what I was saying is that how do people respond to you when do you tell them that you live on a narrowboat, and is that accepted? Did you feel proud to live on a narrowboat? Because there's a few kids when I was at school that lived. They didn't live on a narrowboat. They just lived on like just a canal boat, one of the wider ones, and they spoke to me and said that it was, sometimes they felt like they didn't really fit in. Has that changed over the years? Do you feel like accepted? Do you feel valid in the community as a narrowboat dweller? What's the official term?
Yeah, I don't really know. There's all kinds of terms, like a cruiser, being on the cut. But yeah, I think it's changed a lot in recent years. I think a lot of that's down to like a lot of kind of canal boat life YouTubers who are kind of turning it into like the new van life. So it's become a lot more kind of appealing for people, and I don't know, it's one of those things where it's a bit of like kind of British cultural heritage. So I think a lot of people have a fondness for the canals, and but there is a darker side to the canals with like. There's quite like a range of characters, let's say, on the canals. So I think there's a bit of both. It's like most things, though. Yeah. I personally find it really. I'm really proud to be on there, and it's a little badge of honor when I when I tell people about it.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I really like it. It's something that I think it's really adventurous, and it's something that's. If you think about people live in camper vans and they go all the way around the world and they go all different parts of the country. It's kind of similar to that. And one thing I really like, it's really leisurely and sedate. Like you mentioned there, like a lot of people go walking on the canal routes every weekend. There's lots of pubs and lots of socialization goes on around that kind of area. So I reckon it's kind of cool, man. That's awesome. Anyway, let's start talking about the hobby then. So without going too deep into your specific hobby history, just give us a general idea about what you first started playing and when.
So like a lot of people my age, I think I got into the hobby when Lord of the Rings came out at the cinemas, and then Games Workshop did that amazing magazine series where you collected like models each magazine, and they give you little hobby things. And I have a younger brother that's like 2 years younger than me, so we just ate that up. And we lived in Leicestershire, so we were only about an hour away from Warhammer World. And I have a lot of fond memories of going to Warhammer World with my brother and just poring over the cabinets and looking at all the new stuff. So yeah, very much like the Lord of the Rings miniatures game was like kind of my in. I tried to get into 40k and stuff at certain points, but as I can probably discuss a bit later, I really bounced off of that game and its rule systems and the complexity. And I personally feel like Lord of the Rings is probably one of the best games that Games Workshop's ever made. So I feel like I peaked too soon. I went straight in with one of the best games.
Was that just because of that was the first one that you picked up, or do you genuinely believe that the rule mechanics are better than the systems you've played?
Yeah, I mean, like trying to understand the rule mechanics more deeply, because I used to be a toy designer in a past life, and I used to work a lot on kind of coming up with games and working on board games and toys and all kinds of stuff. And I've always had like a real interest in games design theory. And as I got older and kind of when I came back to the hobby, my focus was more about like trying to like understand why certain games work, whereas other games don't. And I feel like the Lord of the Rings system just has the best of so many different systems, and I think it's kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants with previous rule systems. It takes kind of the best bits from each.
What's your favorite? What would you say is one rule mechanic or one part that really sets it apart in your opinion? Is there a particular one?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's their like I go you go system, because it's like somewhere between alternating activations and your classic I go you go, but it splits kind of. So in Lord of the Rings, like each player will do all of their movement, and then the next player does all of their movement, and it goes to shooting and combat, and it means that like you still get that grand kind of feel of strategy, because you're kind of moving whole armies and all of that, but it means that you don't get the kind of like instant getting board wiped on turn one if you don't go first. And the way that they play with priority with the fate points and might points in that game really like improves that system even further. So yeah, I think that's the thing that was very interesting to me.
You a force of good? Or your force of evil?
Oh, no. Always evil. And it's funny because a lot of people who play Lord of the Rings always want to be the good guys, but I am quite happy to be the gobbos in any game. So yeah, definitely an evil player.
Nice, that's cool, man. That's really cool. So you mentioned that you started with Lord of the Rings and then stuck with that. Was that like how old were you when you got into that? That was early 2000s was Lord of the Rings, right? So you've been pretty young.
Oh God, yeah. It must have been from like 12 to about 16, okay. 17. And then girls and drinking and partying happened. But when I came back to the hobby, I must have been in my late 20, like 26, 27. I've always like dabbled in nerdy stuff, but I'd never really got back into like modeling and building and playing till quite later on. But yeah, it was kind of always Lord of the Rings. But when I kind of got back into the hobby, I really did try to kind of branch out a bit more. Played, I think Kill Team was the game that I kind of settled on when I first started. And once again, just got completely overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of rules you had to hold in your head.
What brought you back to the hobby?
I think partly it was like actually having a hobby space again. Because I was like, I sound very weird living in vans and sheds, but yeah, I was always in like very small spaces. I finally got a place in a flat with my partner, and we had a spare room. So yeah, inevitably the nerd stuff got pulled out of the attic and filled up. And yeah, it was just great. Like it felt like kind of coming back to an old friend or something. And yeah, actually being able to like do the things that I was doing as a kid with like 5 years of model making experience behind my belt meant that I was able to actually like achieve stuff that I could have only dreamt of as a kid, which was really fun.
It's good that, innit? I do that sometimes when I make certain hobby purchases or I'm painting certain things. It's like I am doing it for me right now, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, the 12-year-old me is really happy right now. Like, he's just like, dude, this is amazing. So instead of waiting to get it for a birthday, or instead of kind of like someone get it for you, you can go and treat yourself and get this, and you don't need to explain it to anybody else. Just go and do it, man. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it was definitely that. When I finally found a club in Chester, where I've been living for the last couple of years, I kind of mentioned half-heartedly like, oh, I used to play Lord of the Rings, and then like the eyes lit up in about 6 or 7 of the guys at the club, and they're like, we had like a whole night just reminiscing about the game, and then next week we started a Battle Companies campaign where we all just dragged out our old minis from childhood, and that lasted for about a year. And it was probably some of the best hobby experience that I've ever had.
That's really cool, man. That's awesome. But always GW? Have you kind of dabbled in other rule sets and other companies?
So I think like as a kid, like you didn't hear about other games, like, well, I didn't anyway. So it was always Games Workshop growing up. But yeah, when I got back into the hobby, I started hearing about all these amazing games from like indie creators, and that was like a massive inspiration for me. I never thought I'd be able to be one of those guys. It was always just a pipe dream, but I was so inspired by people like Sean Sutter with Relic Blade, literally doing like almost every part of that game. And then in more recent years, there's like Max Fitzgerald with Turnip, and they're just insane like world that he's created, and the artwork and his writing as well. Oh geez, I'm so jealous of these guys. But yeah, I think we're in like a kind of golden age now, and there's more stuff than you could even like dream of like getting through. But I'm trying my best. I'm trying to like get all my guys at my club into all these weird obscure games, and the best thing is like most of them don't require much to get onto the table. It's like 5 or 6 models for a lot of these games.
Yeah, I'm with you. It seems to be like, you know, a lot of barriers that people might potentially have that stops their game or their idea being available are kind of taken away. There's so many amazing games that are on websites such as, but not limited to, Drive-Thru RPG. Like, I just kind of mooch around on Drive-Thru RPG, and there's just so many amazing games on there. A lot of them are print and play. A lot of them are just simply a rule book. You can play on the minis that you've already got. It's like you can get an amazing game just $5, and it's so great that, you know, people are able to take this idea, tinker around with it a little bit, and make it available. And you do see a lot of those games that then transit into bigger audiences because they get a lot of traction on those websites, and then they're picked up by a major publisher, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that's so exciting for me is that, like, just like in the miniature hobby, like when, I don't know, growing up, the paint jobs were always amazing that you saw, but like in the last 5-10 years, it seems like everyone's just become like superhuman in their ability to paint and convert models, and they just the general level at which everyone is hobbying in the miniatures community is just mind blowing now. And I feel like we're kind of getting to that point with like the indie games, the graphic design, the art, the concepts. Like every new one that comes out, I'm like, oh wow, this is so much better than the last one I saw. And yeah, just being part of that is super exciting.
Nice. Well, you mentioned that you kind of picked games up again as an adult, but you'd also mentioned that you kind of worked to develop toys. Is that right? And you'd mentioned rule sets also within that. So was it strictly toys, or we talk about maybe board games as well?
So it was a very strange job. I didn't even know this job existed until uni. We had to do a placement year as part of our uni course. I was an industrial designer, and like they had a list of all these different jobs, and it was like faucet designer for taps, or like just really really boring kind of projects. And then at the very bottom of the list there was toy inventor, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna have to do, but I am getting that placement by hook or by crook. So yeah, I spent a year at Fuse, which is probably one of like the most famous toy invention houses. They used to be the guys who created Polly Pocket and Mighty Max. All those amazing like pop-up play sets and like all those crazy mechanisms. So I got an internship there, and like instantly was just like, this is the greatest job ever. It was just a load of guys who just were making everything the old school way, with like plastic card and wire and springs, and I just got taught like the kind of old school way of doing this, because this was just before 3D printing had become like a big thing. Nowadays everything is now just like prototype with 3D printing and 3D modeling, but I'm so like lucky that I got to get in there and see like the crazy stuff people were making by hand. So yeah, I did that for a year, did my final year of uni, and then went straight back into the industry and worked at a place called Design by Touch, which was founded by some ex-Lego guys. And yeah, they have one of the only kind of spaces where they're allowed to kind of take all of the bits and stuff from Lego, and downstairs in our office was just a massive set of IKEA cabinets just full to the brim with every Lego piece you could imagine. So for the first couple of years I was working on Lego sets and creating like custom mechanisms and custom bricks for that, but then progressed onto all kinds of different toy designs and inventions. And finally, one of my favorite things that I did working there, we created a board game prototype, and that was like my first kind of foray into games writing, and it just lit a fire in me that's been burning since then.
Yeah, what was it you liked about it?
I think it's just like how multidisciplinary that project was. You were designing pieces, you were designing graphics, you were rules writing, and for me, like one of the things that I always look for in games is where like rules and theme kind of come together. So like a clever little system that mimics something and gives you the feel that you're doing something. So the game I was designing was like a pirate game, and yeah, just being able to bring in like little chests of gold and searching for treasure and sea monsters and building that all into the mechanics was just really fun.
Nice. That's cool. That's really good. But it sounds like you moved on from that, right? And started doing something else. Like what? So what was the catalyst for that? Then moving on, was it just other things?
So unfortunately, like with most jobs that like people would call a dream job, there's always a catch, and the catch was they don't pay you enough, and they also work you to the bone, which was great for the first few years. But I think in that industry, they take on young people with like kind of a lot of energy, and you see it a lot. Like a lot of people will burn out after 2 or 3 years. I managed to get to about 5 years, but yeah, it was just so mentally taxing. We were working on different designs every couple of weeks. Like the usual turnaround in a design studio is if you're working on a project, you'll be working on it for like 6 months to a couple of years until it gets manufactured, and then we were doing that like every couple of weeks. But I think the other thing that kept nagging on me was like a lot of this stuff would be plastic tat that would just be going to landfill. And yeah, it was sad because I really enjoyed the work, but the environmental impact of what we were doing was kind of slowly gnawing away at me as well. So yeah, eventually I made the hard decision to leave, and then I kind of tried to start my own business, but this that happened just as lockdown was kicking in, so that was a whole other rigmarole. Yeah,
for sure. So that's interesting, man. That sounds like you're not only hobbying for fun and you're doing that, but you've got like some insider knowledge and kind of industry knowledge and all that kind of stuff. That's really interesting. And so if you looked at your hobby desk now, I guess your hobby desk needs to be really efficient, right? Do you want to talk to us about how you make your work area efficient? Because I think that's really important to touch on before we start talking about how, because not only are you hobbying, but you're also creating minis at that workstation, I guess, right? So talk to us about some of your efficiencies that you've created to make sure that your hobby desk is super efficient.
Yeah, so from my previous life working as a designer, I do CAD a lot for my general work, and I've got this this thing now as a designer where I can't look at anything, and if I think that it can be made more efficient, not have a go at doing that. So I will always try and like make custom solutions and organize things. And because I was in the van for a little while, and all of my hobby spaces, to be fair, over the years have been very compact, either in kitchens or in the side of a bedroom. So I think this is the same for most people, but you'd be surprised how much you can actually pack in if you're super organized. But for now, like, most of the stuff all comes down to like little organization drawers and those kind of like little bits boxes that a lot of people have. But I'm always trying to like improve the kind of workflow of getting from kind of an idea to actually getting it onto the workbench. The thing that's a struggle now is that because we're in such a small space, I have to pack everything away every time I finish, and that's the one thing I do miss from having a bigger workspace, being able to like leave stuff out and work on projects for multiple days at a time. But yeah, in general, I think it's just like refining the tools that you have and knowing how to use tools for multiple things rather than having a custom tool for every very specific job. You'd be amazed what you can do with a scalpel and some super glue, right? Yeah. Like, I think the main thing I use is a scalpel, super glue, and some flush cutters to do 99% of the work that I do for not only my hobby projects, but for my work projects as well.
Nice. That's cool. So as we kind of get on to, there's two main aspects. There's like the rule set that you're finished creating or still creating.
Yeah, it's in its kind of final form now. It was changing pretty substantially week by week for a good 4 months, but in the last month or so, it's pretty much stayed exactly the same. Mm-hmm. The only thing I'm waiting for is to do a final kind of like pass for terminology and all that kind of stuff, just to make sure it's super clean. Mm-hmm. I'm very dyslexic, so this is going to be the mountain that I may die on. But yeah, that's where the rules are at the minute.
That's cool. And then the other aspect is you've mentioned at the start of the show, minis that are created with natural materials. So out of the rule set and the minis, like which came first?
So it was the minis. Like, as part of moving onto the boat, I had to get rid of like 80% of all of the kind of hobby stuff that I had, because I've always been like into kit bashing. That's always been my thing. Like I enjoy painting and I enjoy gaming, but like the kit bashing side of it has always been the thing that I've been interested in. And like any good kit bashing goblin, like I had accumulated a whole pile of junk, random bits of plastic with cool shapes, random bits of model kits or toys. So yeah, I had to get rid of all of that, and I was kind of at a loss because I was like, how am I going to make stuff again, because I don't have the space to, even if I was just to get like junk and kind of reuse like kind of packaging and stuff like Bill making stuff does, I couldn't store it. So I was like, I need to find something that I can use and just chuck away instantly or have ready access to. And yeah, I don't know how I think the idea came from watching there's a guy who does similar things called Beacorns on YouTube, and he, funnily enough, he's an ex-Lego employee too, and he makes these little characters out of acorns, and he's a photographer, and he photographers them, he photos them in nature. Mm-hmm. And I saw that video, and I was like, I could totally do that with miniatures. So I had a go at it, but then I was like, it just didn't look right. Because the scale is like slightly off, I was like, I can't really get it small enough. But I'd just got a resin printer at that point, and I was like, I wonder if I could like print some scale heads just to add to this like body that I've built. And the minute I put this little scale head on, it just tied everything together. It kind of like made it feel like it was within scale, and it gave that extra detail that is like so needed in miniatures. And yeah, I did this one model and I showed it to a few friends, and they were like, you have to like do more of these. So yeah, I started off with one and then just did a few, and unlike every other one of my crazy projects up until this point, I never really show my work. I show it to like people at the club or friends and family, but I never really put anything online. I was chronically offline up until this point. Yeah. But yeah, a few friends kind of convinced me to start an Instagram, and a few friends said I should really do a video to show how I made one. And yeah, that first video on YouTube went really well, and I got so much like lovely comments, and then started seeing more and more nature bashing pop up in other people's feeds, and yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there, really.
So is nature bashing a term that you coined, or is it something that's happened before?
So I wasn't aware of this before I started Fae, but there are, I'm gonna butcher the name, but Bauhaus Miniatures. So there are a few people who have actually done what I would term a nature bash, and yeah, it was really cool actually. Like once I posted a few things, like loads of people put me in this direction, and yeah, I mean, we're a niche hobby anyway, and then to have like a very niche within that hobby, it's always nice to find other people in your own little weird thing. But
it's amazing.
Yeah,
what was the first mini you created?
It was like a little. I think it was like a acorn. It was like a little acorn guy with. I think I put like an old goblin head and the old Lord of the Rings goblin legs on him, and then little twig arms. And yeah, that was the first guy. And I put a load of moss around him, and I don't know, it was just so fun. Like it was so quick, and like unlike plastic or metal, it's really easy to work with natural materials. It's just wood, so you can kind of carve away and like layer stuff up. And I think the other thing that was really fun was just like when you start looking at nature in this way, you start seeing like the whole of the outdoors is just like one big bits box, and you start looking at things you never look at before, and it's really got me to kind of appreciate nature in a whole new way.
Yeah, it's not a trillion miles away from what a lot of people do with their basin stuff. Like I've got a mate who refuses to pay anything for basin material. He's like, I'm not paying £4 for a little box of grit. There's grit everywhere. So he just has little boxes, and every so often he'll just grab one and he'll put something in his little his little tub, and he takes it home. So I have that, and that includes like mosses and things like that as well. Like, you know, we've been out for a hike certain times, and he'll just go and grab some moss, and he just dries it out, and then he uses it on his basic material. So it's not a trillion miles away, right? It's not something that's completely out of left field that no one's ever thought of or heard of. And also going back in time, you know, you'd have a lot of people that would whittle stuff. They'd, you know, get twigs and small branches, and they'd like whittle toys and different things. So man, that's cool. That's really, really good. So you mentioned the little acorn guy, and then you mentioned like the YouTube channel. So how did it feel? Just to extend what we were talking about just there, how did it feel when you started to connect and see other people that were doing this, and then when you got the feedback from the things that you were doing on YouTube where people were liking it? Like, how did that feel when you connected with this niche within a niche?
Oh, it was amazing. I think like one of the things that kind of I didn't really realize until I kind of put myself out there was like how, because people always say like connect with the community and all this kind of stuff, but I was never somebody to like message people on Instagram or comment on videos, like, and this idea of like connecting with the community was like kind of an abstract thing. But the minute I put myself out there was YouTube and stuff, and actually started chatting to people and like actually making real connections with people, it's been kind of like game changing for me. I have my club and I have my friends at the club, but like now it feels like there's a huge broader community out there that it's just so nice to connect to. And like speaking with you, speaking with other people, it's the one thing that I wish I'd done sooner, really, is actually like put myself out there a bit more, and not just like keep all these little projects to myself. But yeah, it's been lovely.
Was there a reason why you weren't? What was it that was stopping you, if you don't mind talking about that?
I think it's like, I don't know, it wasn't the fact that I was scared to show stuff. It's just like I never really used social media that much, and I get so much from like consuming. Like I'm a chronic YouTube, like I love YouTube. I love watching stuff, but yeah, I never really would put much out there. And yeah, I think I've always been a bit of a lone wolf, and it was definitely like uncomfortable. I started going onto Discord as well, which has been a bit of a game changer as well, because I've never used Discord before, and like I find it a little bit overwhelming still, but some of the communities there are just incredible. I joined the Fringe community Discord. Shout out to the guys in Fringe. But yeah, that was the first time that I'd actually really met up with anyone online when I went to Fringe Fest this year, and it was just such a lovely kind of thing to kind of meet these people that you'd been chatting to online, and they turn out to be like just normal guys, and you all have something in common, and it's just instant rapport with these people that you've never met. And it's probably one of my best hobby experiences for a good long time.
That's great, man. It's awesome that you've, whatever made you do that with friends or otherwise, that you do. Like I've got a similar story you won't necessarily go into, but yeah, especially Discord is something that I really do appreciate, and echo that feeling of meeting up with these people that, just if you were sat on a bus, you just might not ever really speak to them, or you might pass by them but never really engage. But the fact that you've just engaged on Discord or something and you're able to meet up is something that's awesome, man. So that's really cool. So talk to us about how that developed and escalated. You did a little Acorn guy. You obviously enjoyed that enough to do more. So how did that whole new hobby kind of evolve and escalate?
This is quite funny actually, because I had a go at writing a rule set years ago. I'd even sent the first draft to Max, the creator of Turnip, and he very kindly sent me some feedback. And looking back at it, I was like, there was nothing there for him to actually give feedback to. It was a mess. But yeah, I've always wanted to design a game, but I'd started playing Relic Blade with a friend of mine, and started listening to Sean Sutter's podcast, and he talked a bit about the development, and this all came about whilst I was making these miniatures, and all my friends were like, oh, you should have a go at making a game around it and fleshing out some of these creatures that you're making with lore and stuff, and it just all felt super overwhelming and not doable. But after listening to the kind of story of how Relic Blade was created, I was like, well, I can just think about this for years and years and not do anything, or I can just have a go. So I downloaded Nomad Sculpt on my iPad, and had a go at trying to do some digital 3D modeling, which I had never touched at all, and I thought it was going to be this horrific process of learning a new project. But within a couple of days, I'd kind of got the basics, because it was a super simple program, and I found it addictive. It was so fun, and the fact that I had a 3D printer and I could take these kind of crappy 3D models that I'd done and like print them out and it actually be a real thing in my hand was just like instant dopamine. So yeah, in that combined with making the majority of the model and then combining those two things together, it felt like this like perfect fusion of like the next stage of hobbying. And then because that worked, I was like, well, maybe I can have a go at writing some rules that aren't terrible. But because I really didn't know where it was going to go, I thought that was a great kind of time to try and set it up as a devlog series on YouTube, and kind of hold myself accountable, because I was like, if I do this and don't tell anyone, I think it'll be very easy to quit. But if I do a YouTube series and there's hundreds of people watching, then there might be a little chance that I might actually finish this project. So yeah, I just bit the bullet, did the first devlog episode, and yeah, the rest is history.
Nice. That's really cool. So tell us a little bit about the YouTube channel, because the YouTube channel seems integral to the majority of the things that you've done so far. So tell us a little bit about the YouTube channel. You remind us of the name, and if we click on it right now, what sort of things would we be seeing, and what sort of things could we watch?
Yeah, so the channel is Fae Miniatures, and it started off, as I said, just I did that first video where I showed a nature bash of one of the guys that I was making. Cheekily, actually, I did that video for work for my new job, I don't know how I wangled that, but there's some 3D scanners in the video where I 3D scan one of the little Nature Bash models that I made and scan it in and then clean it up and then reprint it out as a final model. And my company that I work for, we do 3D printing tutorials and work with like schools and makerspaces on how to apply 3D printing and scanning technologies. So yeah, I had a very cheeky conversation with my boss. I was like, I've got this project I'm working on. I think it would really work for a video for our YouTube channel. So I did. That was the way that I actually initially got the first video made. But then from that point on, I was like, okay, now that I've got the ball rolling with this, I'll actually start developing the game. And yeah, the first few videos were kind of my stumbling steps getting from like just this rough idea of what I wanted to a first draft of the game. And yeah, I've done a few episodes in that series where I kind of show all of the things that I messed up and all of the things that I've rewritten the rules for. And then there's a few other videos where I've done a few collaborations with people. I did Monster Bash last year, which was really cool. Got to meet a load of awesome YouTube creators in the space. And then a few of the videos were kind of upgrades to my workshop area. As I was like, if I'm actually going to be doing this a bit more full time, I definitely need to make this more efficient to shoot videos in. So yeah, there's a whole mix of stuff on there. But in the future episodes, I've been working a lot on the lore around the game. And people keep asking for more nature bashing videos because I've only got the one up at the minute. So the plan is to do nature bashes of each one of the factions and then kind of do narrations over the top of it, telling a little bit about the lore for each of the factions.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So let's get on to the rule set now then. So tell us a little bit about the setting and the environment and maybe the different factions we could bump into if we were playing this game.
Yeah, so the premise of Fae is it's a 1-to-1 scale miniature game. So the miniatures you're creating are actually like how big they would be in real life because you're making little fairies and you're making little goblins. And the idea is that you can play it actually just like on the ground, on the forest floor, because everything is to scale. The idea, I did a lot of camping before making the game, and I've always wanted to have a game that I could actually take with me camping. And like obviously the big problem with miniature games is lugging a load of scenery around with you. So I was like, I wonder if I could just make a game where you could use nature itself as the battlefield. So that was the initial premise. And then the other thing that I really like wanted to put forwards in Fae was magic. For me, like the coolest thing in every miniature game is like the crazy spells that break the rules of the game, and it's always like a small aspect of other miniatures games. You've got maybe a single wizard, or you've got like one hero character that can do something cool. But I was like, I wonder what a game would look like if every character could just do crazy things. Yeah. So yeah, that's the premise, and the way that I kind of applied that without making it like super overwhelming was that each faction has a custom deck of cards. I wanted the rules to be really simple and intuitive, but have like a lot of emergent gameplay from them. So I stripped the rules back. The first video I did on this was called the One Stat War Game, where I looked at like one-page rules and how they managed to strip all of their models down to just 2 stats. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that with just 1 stat. So I went on this big journey to try and like streamline miniatures rules to like the bare essentials. And currently, the way that all the miniatures work is that your miniature is just represented by a base size, so it's either a small, medium, or large base, and that gives it its like health and power. And then the weapons that it holds, the weapons themselves kind of hold the stats to what you need to roll to hit. So like a sword, you need to roll a 4 up, or a two-handed weapon, you need to roll a 6 up. And this was a way of kind of like allowing people to nature bash and not really worry about what they were creating. and let the rules just kind of slot into whatever they built. But what I found after I did that was that like all of the factions like were basically the same. It's the only thing that mattered was how big the unit was and what weapon they were holding to differentiate them. So I thought to actually bring in faction identity, they'd have spells that would make them play completely differently. And that's where the spell decks came in. So each faction has a 9-card spell deck that you can kind of build with a mix of faction-specific cards or like kind of neutral cards. And yeah, all of their playstyle kind of comes from the magic that they use, which I think was a kind of nice way of allowing kind of really simple kind of model rules, but then bringing in depth into the cards and the magic.
That's cool, man. That's interesting. It's really cool. There's probably a really cool journey that you've been on there, where you're really thinking, yeah, what is essential and what is totally not essential. I guess that echoes your life in a little way. You know, you're living on a narrowboat. What's essential? What things?
Yeah.
How many pans do I actually need? You know, I've got pans. How many of those pans do I actually need? You know, that's kind of cool. It's cool that you're doing that in your life, but it's also cool that you're doing that in your play. So. You mentioned the small and medium or large base size. So I'm guessing we're talking like a skirmish game. We're not talking about mass battle, rank and flank, right?
Oh no, sorry, I did a terrible job of explaining the core. Like, yeah, so you're basically fielding a small troop of fairies of about 3 to 4 fairies. And I played Peter Vigor's Necropolis recently, and it was so cool. Like, playing on these tiny little diorama bases. So I've kind of switched the rules now. So you're playing on a 16 by 16 board. So just like in Necropolis. But because Fae is more about like tricksters and misdirection and all that kind of stuff, I thought like it should be a lot more of a kind of objective based tactical game. In the lore, the fairies and the Fae have kind of like retreated behind the veil and have separated our world from the Fae world for centuries and centuries. But in recent years, the spells of binding that are separating our world from the Fae are weakening, and some factions within the Fae want the veil to break so that they can kind of take control over our world, whereas others want the veil to hold. So the premise for all the games you're playing is that you're kind of teleporting into our world through the kind of fairy rings where the veil is weakest, and you're trying to bind the fairy rings together, because whichever faction binds all of the fairy rings will have control of whether the veil stays or whether it falls. So each like game is some kind of way in which you're basically casting a ritual on a fairy ring that you're playing within. Thinking about it should really be a circular board if they're playing in fairy rings. So that might be an update that I might need to add. But I've got a few scenarios so far, but they're all kind of like more Malifaux style, kind of objective control or capture the flag or all that kind of things. And another thing I took from Malifaux, actually, which is another core part of the flavor of Fae, is that each small troop of around 4 to 5 miniatures also has 6 pieces of summonable terrain, and these kind of act as kind of unique summonable terrain that does different things for each factions, but they also act as kind of strategy markers for certain objectives and scenarios. So for example, the fairies have some will-o'-wisps that they can place down that will draw enemies towards them. They've got fairy rings that they can place down that act as kind of teleportals that they can either freely jump between or push enemies into to yeet them to the other side of the board. There's a lot of very cool kind of faction-specific stuff that's expressed through their faction markers, and the idea is that those are also nature bashed, so you can kind of build them out of like little bits of mushrooms or thorns or twigs or whatever. And
It's really interesting that you talked about being like 1-to-1 scale. My mind immediately went to the Borrowers, and I remember how cool the Borrowers were when I was a kid. The Borrowers, I think it's a book initially, but then it was like a TV series of like very small humans that lived in the same house as bigger humans and all that kind of stuff. Man, that's super cool. So that's like kind of a really interesting idea. And you mentioned a 16 by 16 board. You mentioned that, you know, you look at it small troop numbers, used like 3 to 5 models. You mentioned magic being an integral part, and you mentioned that there was a magic deck, and the magic was the real kind of dividing factor between how the factions play. So maybe pick out a faction, or pick out a couple of spells that you think would be really cool for people to use as a tip of the iceberg to delve into your game.
Probably one of the more unique factions are the the Mushroom Folk. Their whole premise is that they are like a hive mind, all connected through the mycelial roots, and their faction markers are just little mushrooms that they can place down. And the idea is that if you can place a mushroom marker next to an opponent, that opponent then gets infected by the mushroom. And for all the for the use of all your spells, they're treated as one of your own units. So you can basically make an infected player move or deal damage to itself, or basically all the spells say target a friendly Shrewman, and you can treat the opponent as a Shrewman if they're infected. And then if an infected model moves, you can place another mushroom where they've moved to. So by being infected, they're slowly spreading your own spores throughout the game. So that's one cool one. And then the other one that's quite unique are the Tree Folk faction. Their whole premise is that they grow. So unlike the other factions, you have a set troop composition. So you start off the game with a big tree folk guy and 2 little ones. The big tree folk guy can start further up the board because it's called Awaken. So the idea is that these trees have actually, they were in the battlefield before the battle started, and they just wake up, and that's why they're further up the board. Okay. But the main kind of ability of the tree folk is to grow. So if you don't do a movement during your activation with one of your tree folk, the next turn you can replace it with a tree folk of a bigger size. So you actually take the model off and put the bigger version of it, and you can slowly grow your force. So you kind of sacrifice tempo and positioning, but then you can like build up this massive army of trees. And then all of their kind of spells work around putting tree markers down on the board, your faction markers, and the more faction markers you have on the board, the more powerful your spells come. So yeah, there's lots of little kind of thematic stuff in the rules that kind of try and, like, for me, the most important thing was to really get the flavor across of each one of these factions. Even though they're essentially just chess pieces with set sizes and stats, the gameplay comes out of their spells and how they interact with them.
That's really cool. And so how fun has it been for you to create this world? And is it something that you had experience of before? Or is it something that, you know, when you were a kid, did you just make your own worlds, for example? Or is this something that's completely new to you?
No, this is completely new to me, especially the lore side of it that I'm working on now. I've never like DM'd or done any role playing, and I feel like I'm catching the bug, because like writing all of the lore up for the game and fleshing out the history of these factions and how they interact has just been so fun. But yeah, in terms of like the game and developing the game, the only other reference I had to it was that board game that I worked on. Design by Touch, and that was with a team, and it's very different developing something with a team than on your own. So but I've been so lucky. I have such a supportive club, and my poor friends just every week get a new set of rules that they have to bash their head against. And they've been great, like helping me kind of refine things and finding the juice in the game.
That's cool, man. And talk to us about how like a regular game would play out. You've mentioned that a lot of it is to do with capturing points and taking control of these rings to then either combine the realms or keep them separate. But if we'd set up just talk us through like deployment and then turn structure, like what sort of ways are we activating and what sort of things are we doing when we activate our minis?
Yeah, so the current 60 by 16 board, you start in opposite corners. The three main scenarios I've got so far, one is Blood Ritual, which is your kind of melee scenario. Whenever you kill a unit, you capture like a blood token, and you're basically trying to create a ritual sacrifice. Like you're trying to bring the blood into like a central objective in the center of the board to bind the circle. The wrinkle on that scenario is that it's the first person to put the third token in. So somebody could put two tokens in first, and then the other player could put the final token in and they'd win. So it creates all these really interesting end game scenarios where people are like hoarding tokens until they get free to then make a mad dash to the center, or that's a really interesting scenario for something that's like supposed to be the melee scenario. There's a lot of tactics that come into the kind of mind games as when somebody's going to try and actually complete the ritual. The other one is Push the Ley Lines, which again, this one's definitely a riff on the Malifaux scenario, but you have kind of a marker in the center of the board, and then a marker 6 inches away from each person's troop, and you're basically pushing the markers to try and get them to the opposite side of the field, and you score points. So it's Fae football is what I call it, and that one's a really fun one for movement shenanigans and using your markers, your faction markers, to block off routes and basically block off paths. And then the scenario that I think kind of encapsulates Fae the best is it doesn't actually have a name yet, but you have 3 objective markers spread across the center line, and you're trying to create triangles with your faction markers. So when you place a faction marker down, once you've got 3 of them, you kind of connect them with imaginary lines. And if your one of the markers is within the zone of that triangle, you capture that marker. So it's a lot about zone and area control, that scenario. Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 main scenarios. And then in terms of gameplay, it's actually alternating activations. After all I said about how much I loved Middle-earth's system, I caved at the last moment and actually went to alternating activations. And I think the game's better for it, but each unit has activation points. Most units will have 2 activation points. Your captain will have 3. And each unit has a free 4-inch move. And then, like most kind of skirmish games, you can do different things with your activation points. You can do extra moves, you can interact with objects on the field, you can place your faction markers. So one of the more unique things to Fae is the fate point system, though. Something that I really wanted to get from Lord of the Rings is the fate points, because that's probably the most fun section of that game. So whenever you have kind of action points left over, you can kind of bank them as fate points and kind of focus. So you can spend fate points to reroll dice. You can spend fate points to make reaction actions. So certain, like if you get attacked, for example, if you have action points left over, you can make counter attacks. Or if you have fate points, you can use those fate points to make counter attacks. But the fate points were like the final bit of pizzazz, I think, that really helped the game. And the final way you can get fate points is if you roll a 1 and whiff a roll, you get a fate point back. And if you roll a crit, you get to do the same action that you were attempting again for free. So that's another little kind of exploding dice mechanic that was quite fun.
That's cool. Have you developed a sort of campaign structure where different missions and things roll into a bigger overarching narrative or story?
That is something I'd like to explore in future expansions. What I'm trying to do right now is trying to make, I don't know, a lot of indie games like do a lot, and I love them for it. But what I'm trying to do is just create like a really tight game that you can play in about 40 minutes to an hour, that is kind of a pick up and play thing. Because just looking at how we play kind of indie games in our club, like a lot of the big campaigns are saved for the bigger games like Mordheim or Battle Companies or whatever, and it's very rare that you can swing doing a campaign game with a little indie skirmish. So I thought, as the first offering, just focus on a really fun kind of head-to-head 1v1 skirmish game, and then I can kind of build that out afterwards with expansions.
Yeah, it makes total sense, man. That's really cool. And so just as we begin to wind our conversation up, the hours rattled by as it always does. I feel like I've talked to you for another few hours, but I know that you've got lots of other stuff you need to be doing. You need to be getting the barnacles off your hull and all that kind of stuff. But is there anything that we haven't spoken about the game that you think is really important that we bring up before we move to the final part of the show?
The only thing we haven't really spoken about is like the ability to kind of make this stuff for very little money. Like one of the big things that is always in the front of my mind with an indie game is like it's always an uphill battle to try and get people to do stuff for this game. So I was like, how can I lower the barrier of entry to all of these things? So instead of having to buy like custom minis or like building a whole load of terrain for a new board, like a lot of the stuff about Fae is all about just accessibility. So the fact that your materials are basically free, apart from like gluing a few heads that you've got in your bits box onto the bodies, the fact that you don't actually need to like build any terrain. You can like use a banana and and like some bits off your desk, and it works because it's 1-to-1 scale. You're just fighting on your table because the fairies have got into your house. Like all of those things were like at the forefront of my mind when I was trying to like think of what to do with a skirmish game that hasn't really been done before, and justify its existence in this world where there's 100 million other skirmish games vying for your attention.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't mention it at the start because I didn't know how you'd respond, and I know that I'm very infantile in many things, but the first thing I thought about was just team Mr. Hanky. That's where my head went when I'm making my own minis.
Genuinely, I am blown away by everyone's interpretations of this concept. Like you mentioned the borrowers, and that's I really want to write in a faction for like little folk, like gnomes, borrowers, leprechauns, all that kind of stuff. Because one thing I haven't really explored in the builds that I've done, purely as an aesthetic choice, is adding in like real world items like buttons for shields and sewing needles for swords and all that kind of stuff. And I'd love to see people use more real world items, be that a hanky if that's what floats your boat. Like I'm just really excited to see what people do with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing, man. And as we kind of just turn to the last couple of questions, I just want to say that it's amazing to have spoken to you. You know, one thing that I really love about this hobby is that how it's possible to connect with creative, enthusiastic people that care about what they're doing and care about the hobby. So first and foremost, mate, thanks, because it's not something that, you know, has come easy. You've probably sat and you've worked for many hours doing this, and part of that is selfish because you enjoy doing it and you probably enjoyed the exercise of doing it. But a number of those hours have also been selfless, where it's like you could have done something else, but you're trying to put this together not only for yourself, you're putting it together for other people. So for putting in that effort and dedicating yourself for a certain amount of time to create it, mate, thank you from everyone that plays it. Thank you. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you so much, man. That really means a lot. That's it's one of those things that you don't really think about the people that are going to be playing it. Like I'm kind of just working on this. Like I want people to play it, but I can't get in my head about that because I think it would stress me out too much trying to make something for everyone else. But yeah, it is really nice to actually like get it out, and thank you so much for the opportunity to show it to more people, because it has been something that has been like a bit of a labor of love, but it'll be so worth it if people can get some enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're unsure about how many people that will be, and hopefully it'll be wildly popular and a whole bunch of people will pick it up. But you know, I always think about this in terms of myself with with podcasting, it's like, even if it's just if 5 people listen to this show and they mildly enjoy it, that's a huge success. It's really important to note that. So I hope that it is really successful. I hope that you really enjoy the process, and I hope that you continue to be able to kind of grow and add different bits. But just before we wrap up, what can we do if someone's listening along and I thought that sounds really cool, that sounds really interesting? Like, what can we do to help you with this? Is there a website we can go to? Is it all YouTube based? Can we connect with you? Can we get a PDF of the rule set at some point and play it with our games clubs? What can we do to help you guys get this off the ground?
Yeah, all of the above, really. Like the main thing is I just want to get people's feedback on the game. I have a Discord for the Fae channel. That would be a really great way to contact me. Also on Instagram. But yeah, the main thing is just to get people to have a read of the rules and have a or just make something. Like I get so much joy seeing people making weird stuff out of twigs. I know how strange that sounds, but it's so nice to like kind of turn this hobby into something that will get people connecting with nature a little bit more and getting out there and like enjoying kind of the outdoors a bit more. And I think like have a go at making it, even if it's just like kind of using a bit of conker as an extra shield on one of your existing minis, or like it's one of those things where the minute you start using these materials, you really see the potential. And I just think it's anything that's going to stop us buying more plastic is probably a good thing. So yeah, that's the main thing. Just try and have a go at it and enjoy it. And yeah, I'd love to hear people's feedback.
Nice. And just for people like myself who need to check this stuff up, it's Fae, Fae, correct? And we can find that on YouTube.
Yeah, Fae Miniatures on YouTube, and Fae _miniatures on Instagram, and there's links to the Discord and to the rules on my Instagram. So if anyone wants to go deeper, that's the place to look.
There you go, episode 292 all wrapped up there. Thanks once again to Rob for coming onto the show. Really, really great guy, awesome conversation, great chat, and we wish him all the best with his game and his nature bashing. Nature bashing. That's good, that's a good phrase, that, nature bashing. Mentioned it during the show, but my mind instantly went to quite a gross place with it. But I think there's so many cool things that you could do with nature bashing, and there's so many different kind of biomes that exist in our world that you can kind of do some cool nature bashing and various different things. If you're doing nature bashing on holiday, if you go to the beach, it's obviously going to look a little bit different if you go for a hike in the hills or the forests. So I think that's really cool, man. I think that's a really great extension to our hobby, or a great little difference to our hobby. The way that I've heard of it, as I mentioned it during the show, is that I've got a mate who just refuses to buy any basic materials and he just picks up stuff from wherever he goes to, which is kind of cool. So it's a kind of natural extension to that. That's really, really cool. I really like it. I really like, you didn't pick it up during the show, but you mentioned the fella that runs the YouTube channel called Beacorns. And he makes stuff out of acorns, but it's beacons. I didn't pick that up during the show. I'm not sure, you probably did because you're much more intelligent than me, but yeah, they do call beacons. I'm going to be checking that out on YouTube. That'll be pretty cool. But I hope you guys have been okay over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you guys are all good on keeping things on an even keel. Every so often I mention it on the Discord server that in the your mental health thing, check in with people, make sure they're okay, send a message to people, make sure everything's okay. And oh, brilliant, that's amazing. I'm not sure if you heard that. It's just finished again. But yeah, during the summer there was a whole bunch of building work that was happening, and that kind of happened a lot during the show with Rob, which was really annoying. Hopefully I managed to edit a lot of that out, but if you can hear some drilling in the background, just ironically just happened just now, some drilling like weeks later after I'd had the conversation. So yeah, there you go, awesome, amazing drilling noise. There's only really one tool that they use in China, which is like a kind of electric, kind of not a pneumatic drill, but like a kind of hammer drill that they use. That's the only tool. There you go, there it is again. Just that's the only tool they ever use for anything, just this kind of hammer drill. You want a shelf putting up, hammer drill. You want to take your plaster off your wall, hammer drill. That's all they ever use. And they wear like jelly shoes and no protective equipment either. So I wonder why they haven't got like 4 toes, because they just shear off all their body parts when they use the hammer drill. Anyway, hobby stuff. What have I been up to? Still painting my Goliaths. Not really too much painting over the last couple of weeks. I was really sick last week, so I don't really get anything done. And then this week I've mostly been building stuff. So I'm doing the Goliath gang. I built 2 of them just to do for the monthly paint activity, but then I've got some more Goliath guys, so I spent my time just building a whole bunch of Goliaths, which is pretty cool. So I've got like the 2 starter set Goliath guys. So there was an old school Necromunda starter set that came with Escher and Goliath, so a good few years ago. I managed to pick that up ages ago and kind of had that sticking around. And then there was a new one that came out recently, so I thought I'll pick that up because it was a lot cheaper for some reason. I need to look into it, but it was actually cheaper than usual starter boxes. I'm not sure why. So because it was a lot cheaper, I kind of picked it up, and they had Goliaths in too, but very different ones. So I've got kind of both those 2 gangs, I think about 16 to 18 Goliath dudes. And there's not too much overlap with the styles. I think there's only like 2 or 3 of the gang members that kind of have an overlap between those 2 editions. So that's pretty cool. So I put those together and painting through those. I'll probably do that more over the weekend. I also picked up a Steam controller. I'm kind of into computer games, and Steam have got a Valve have got a Steam controller. And I actually picked up a Steam controller, and it's awesome. It's really, really cool. If you've not ever heard of a Steam controller, if you're a PC gamer, I think you can play it on any console, I think, really. But it's really cool, and the great thing is it's got like some thumb trackpads, which are kind of like a little bit like on your laptop when you've got like the trackpad mouse. So they've got like these little thumb trackpads that you can use a mouse on your PC for, which is really cool. It helps you to not have to bounce around between keyboard and mouse too much when you're playing games with the controller on your PC. So that's really good. I've been enjoying that. And I don't often buy computer games new. Very rarely I buy computer games new. But there's a computer game, Star Wars Zero Company, that just came out yesterday. And so I bought that and uploaded it, so I'll be playing that over the weekend at some point, no doubt. I'm a big fan of XCOM. I'm a big fan of Star Wars 2. So I'm hopefully those 2 things combining will make an awesome game. And XCOM is like a turn-based sci-fi skirmish game, really. You've got a small squad of guys, maybe about 5 people, and you're trying to create certain missions and leveling up. So I really enjoy those XCOM type games, because those are my favorite experiences on the tabletop too, where you got a small skirmish game, you've got a campaign focus, you've got characters that have got like permadeath or injuries, but also they can get experience and new skills. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that game is going to be like, and looking forward to it. And I think it was £40, which for a new computer game, that's pretty good. Some of their new computer games are crazy. They're like kind of 80, 90, maybe sometimes £100 to buy it, like straight off full price, and that's stupid. That's really crazy in my opinion. So $39.99 I think it was for a new game. It's pretty good, so I'm excited to try that. But anyway, it's not just about me, it's about you guys. Hopefully you guys have had a good week. Let us know what you've been doing on the Discord chats. Make sure that you tell us what you've been up to, hobby-wise and painting-wise and game-wise and anything else. And that's all I got. Until next time we're together, keep up with the building noise.